Are we finally getting a sequel to Halloween 4? How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champane, and this is my channel where I talk about all the horror movies that I love, so there's like a healthy dose of slashers. If that sounds good to you, let me know by subscribing and setting your notifications to all, and if you just heard a weird noise, my heat turned on. It's like 2 degrees here in Michigan, and I usually turn my heat off, but I can't do that today. It's just too cold. So in today's video, I have 2 big topics for you guys all about Halloween. The first one is a look into this rumored sequel to Halloween 4, and then I wanted to do a little check-in on the Miramax Halloween TV show and movie that we're going to get in the very near future. So let's start out with Halloween 4. So there have been rumors for a long time now about a requel to Halloween 4, mainly because people really want that, right? Like with Halloween 2018, they cut out Halloween 2 through the rest of them and jumped right into Halloween 2018 from the first movie. That of course left out a lot of lore like the Cult of Thorn. It left out Danielle Harris's character, Jamie Lloyd. It left out so much different stuff that people really liked because, like me, they grew up watching these movies on Fear Fest, and despite the fact that the lore never really adds up between sequels, it's still really cool when you think about it, even when you're bringing in Halloween 3 and the whole Silver Shamrock element and everything like that. Danielle Harris and Scout Taylor Compton have also been driving these rumors for a long time on their podcast. They've been saying, hey, we're both ready and willing to come back to the Halloween franchise. Of course, Danielle Harris gets a lot of people excited because she played Jamie Lloyd in Halloween 4, and knowing that she's willing to come back, that gets people going in terms of wanting a Halloween 4 sequel to happen, and honestly, I couldn't blame them. For me personally, I really liked what they did with Halloween 2018. You can say what you want about Halloween Kills or Halloween Ends because the story got just as messy as the rest of the franchise when they started adding in other elements, but when you're talking about Halloween 2018, the whole idea of cutting out the rest of the franchise just to keep things as simple as possible, I think that really paid off for that movie, because all you had to know is that in 1978, Michael Myers broke out of Smith's Grove Sanitarium and attacked Laurie Strode and all of her friends. Dr. Loomis shot him 6 times, but the new retconned ending was that Michael Myers was apprehended after Dr. Loomis shot him 6 times. He was put back in Smith's Grove Sanitarium where he sat for 40 years, and that was the jumping off point for that movie, and they didn't work in really anything in terms of franchise lore outside of one small detail, which was the Silver Shamrock masks on the kids running around the street during Halloween night, during what I think is the best scene of the movie, which is the one take that happens right when Michael gets his mask and coveralls back. It's awesome. But on the other hand, one of my favorite Halloween movies has always been Halloween 4 because I saw it on AMC Fear Fest back when I was a kid. Jamie Lloyd was the same age as me, so it was really easy to empathize with her, and that's what really made the movie scary, right? Like seeing Laurie Strode go up against Michael Myers, that was definitely scary to a kid at that time, but seeing Michael Myers going after a kid my age, that made Michael scary to me. Of course, the one thing that I really don't like is the sister plot line, because to me, having a Michael Myers that's not going after a specific family obviously makes him scarier, because if I'm not friends with Jamie Lloyd, who's a fictional character, Michael Myers is never going to come after me. So when I was growing up, I always went with the whole lore that was introduced in the first movie, which is that he is not related to Laurie Strode in any way. He only kills her because she goes up and knocks on the front door of the Myers house at the beginning of the movie. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't like to see a requel set in that universe, because outside of the mask and I guess the sister plot line, there's a lot to love in Halloween 4. It has the best fall atmosphere of literally the entire franchise. The intro is the best intro in any of the Halloween movies, except for maybe Halloween 2018 because of the energy it has. It was also shot in Utah versus California, which at least to me looked more Midwestern. I would still love a Halloween movie to actually shoot either up here in Michigan or down in Illinois. I think that would be a great increase in terms of production value, because if you go watch my 2 fan films, Happy Halloween and Happy Halloween 2, we shot both of those in Michigan, and I'd argue that they look more Midwestern than literally the rest of the franchise. So those would be my dreams for a Halloween 4 sequel, just on the top. And it seems like there is some movement there, because Dwight H, the director of Halloween 4, he just put out a memoir, and he did an interview with Bloody Disgusting, and thankfully they asked him about the rumors about Halloween 4, and here's what he had to say. He said, "Oh, definitely. I know Malek Akkad is guiding that, but it's really Universal's play. I mean, I think they really personally, I would love to do it with Halloween 4 writer Alan McElroy. Of course, we'd have to be invited, and I'm sure they have people that they're interested in, so we'll see how that plays out. But sure, I would jump into that in a minute if we could figure out how to make that work. Now, in terms of like concrete info, I know that's just like him putting his hat in the ring, but right now is about the time when you would need something like that to happen. We know that Miramax is working on a new TV show and a new movie, but the whole point of the franchise for them is that they want to make money on it. So there's nothing saying that they couldn't work on their own Halloween movies and then release a sequel to Halloween 4 and then go forward with the one that does better. Kind of like what we're seeing in DC, where James Gunn is doing Batman and the Brave and the Bold with Andy Muschietti, and I'm sure that's going to be great. I don't know about that one, but they're also doing the Batman, which has its own little universe it's carving out in a separate timeline in the DC universe. And then they also have another universe with Joker, which is now getting a sequel with Lady Gaga. So they can do a bunch of different timelines in that world. Why couldn't they do a bunch of different timelines in the Halloween world, right? Like Halloween fans, thankfully, are more open and accepting to big new timeline changes than they are in other franchises. Are they open to big changes in the story structure? No. We all saw how they reacted to Halloween Ends, which was not great. But I think there's definitely a possibility they could keep two timelines running concurrently with Halloween 4, and honestly, I would love to see it. Now, we all know Halloween 4 ends with Jamie Lloyd kind of being taken over by Michael's spirit. She stabs her stepmom, which like that's not great. I wouldn't want them to move forward with that. They could kind of do something, I guess, similar to Scream 5, where Sam Carpenter has the spirit of Billy Loomis living inside her head, and he's constantly kind of pushing her towards this path of being a killer, but she doesn't want to be. I didn't really love that aspect of the Scream 5 and 6 timeline, so I would prefer they kind of just retcon the ending once again like they did with Halloween 2018 and say, yeah, that didn't happen. Michael Myers is still out there. He's immortal. He's coming back on Halloween night. And I'd love to see Jamie Lloyd as an adult kind of go and take him on, sort of like a character in the vein of Laurie in the Halloween trilogy that just ended, but have her actually be an active participant in the movie versus Laurie, who, you know, she was in Halloween 2018 for the most part, but then she was bedridden in a hospital for Halloween Kills. And then she just stood around in Halloween Ends while Allison and Corey kind of did their own thing. I would want Jamie to be the front and center focus as the protagonist of whatever they do with Halloween 4. But with all that being said, if we're only going to get one option in terms of a new Halloween sequel, I'd like to see something new. I don't want another requel. I think the requel trend is dying out. So what I would really like to see is a full franchise reboot that kind of ties into this TV show that we're getting from Miramax. This video is sponsored by Dave. One of the things I've unfortunately learned since buying a house is that keeping track of your finances is difficult. So that's why I'm excited to talk about Dave today. It's an app that's helped me make managing my finances easier. Like even something as simple as its feature that shows me how much money I have left to spend after paying all my bills is super awesome to have. And if it's cool to know that if I'm short on cash and I need some in a pinch, I can take an advance and there won't be any late fees or a credit check. Dave is the banking app that's leveling the financial playing field. Millions of people have already downloaded Dave to make managing their finances easier. In fact, Dave has helped their users avoid over $2.5 billion in overdraft fees since 2017. So when you're ready to try out Dave, download it today at dave.com/JimmyChampagne. That's dave.com/JimmyChampagne. You could get up to $500 in less than 5 minutes when you download Dave. No credit check, no late fees. Download the Dave app now or go to dave.com/JimmyChampagne. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Eligibility criteria and instant transfer fees apply. Banking services provided by Evolve, member FDIC. Huge shout out once again to Dave for sponsoring this video. And that's about where I'll jump into the second topic of this video, which is what are they doing with this TV show and movie? So if you go back to October, all the sources out there say there was a bidding war between A24 and Miramax, specifically for the TV rights to Halloween. A24 was throwing their hat in the ring because they're working on the Crystal Lake TV show on Peacock, and Universal would be the distributor of the TV show if they got the Halloween rights, which, you know, would be good for them. And of course, they need to do more IP stuff because Beau is Afraid lost so much money. They want to have a big pot of money that they can use to fund those weirder movies, and it won't basically put them out of business like it seems like Beau is Afraid almost did. The reason Miramax was going after the TV rights, though, is because they're the owners of the rights to the movies. So to them, they could establish like a Halloween cinematic universe where every 2 years they could release a Halloween movie, and then in between around the Halloween season, they could release a TV show that ties into whatever story is going on in the Halloween world. And honestly, I think that's a really good setup for Halloween because while I wouldn't love a standalone TV show that features Michael Myers or doesn't feature Michael Myers, if it's something that ties into a bigger movie, like builds up to it, that's where I think you could do some really exciting stuff. That gives you the opportunity to bring in things like the Silver Shamrock Company, or you could bring in some of the Cult of Thorn. Like you could research it in between the movies, have a whole new cast of characters that are trying to figure out how to beat Michael Myers, knowing that he's going to come back on Halloween night. So you could think about it like the Halloween movies would always take place on Halloween night in Haddonfield, but the timeline really opens up if you're talking about a TV show, because if you're telling it over an extended period of time, there's nothing saying that that TV show would have to take place on Halloween night. It could take place in between Halloweens and have the characters, like I just said, know Michael is coming back and do whatever they can to build up a defense force against him. And that would kind of get them out of this cycle that's been ramping up a lot more lately. You saw it with Scream 5 and 6 that came out a year apart. I think Halloween movies kind of need 2 years in between where you can develop the story, you can make sure the mask looks good, you can get the practical effects ready. You could really take the time and map things out so you don't end up with a huge mess of a story like we saw with Halloween Kills and Ends, because the whole idea there was let's make Halloween 2018, and then if it's successful, we'll work on Halloween Kills and Ends. A lot of people say that there was already a story idea for Kills and Ends in place when Halloween 2018 came out. I doubt that. There might have been some ideas of a story kernel or something like that, but a lot of the stuff we saw in Halloween Kills was unused stuff from Halloween 2018, and then it had like an extended ending sort of grafted onto it, and Halloween Ends ended up just being a completely new story that really would have felt better as the middle of the trilogy with a third movie at the end, because then you would have gotten the actual showdown between Laurie and Michael that was promised in the marketing. And back in the day when they were releasing Halloween movies at a really fast clip, that's why you started seeing things like Michael's mask not looking right in Halloween 4 or 5, and then it looked better in 6, but it looks completely different to the last two movies. Of course, having H2O and Resurrection come out a year apart, that was disastrous for the franchise. And then with Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, there was a little bit of a break in between, but they just went so far into left field with Michael's character that people just didn't connect with the movie. So when you're talking about a Miramax movie and TV show cinematic universe, what I really want is them plotting out an overarching plot line from the very beginning that they can then hit points on with both movies and TV shows. And honestly, things are looking up at Miramax, right? Like the stuff they've been producing over the past few years hasn't been great, but the CEO stepped down at the beginning of October, right before they actually got the rights to Halloween for both TV and movies. And the newest movie they put out since he departed, The Beekeeper, is one of the most talked about things in years from them, and the upcoming show from Guy Ritchie on Netflix, The Gentleman, actually looks really good as well. So while they haven't replaced him as the CEO, I don't know who's running Miramax right now. Whoever's doing what they're doing right now is doing a really good job, and that bodes well for the Halloween franchise going forward. I talked about in a video last year how I'd love to see it be a period piece in the vein of the flashbacks and Halloween Kills, and while I think that would be really cool, I think they could also do a more modern take on Michael Myers where they keep in lore from some of the other movies and keep it loose, right? Like they don't strictly adhere to everything that was introduced, because if you do that, it's just going to become a complete mess. Like they could cherry pick things like the Silver Shamrock Company, they could cherry pick things like the Cult of Thorn and really flesh that out so that it actually makes sense. And they could also keep aspects like Michael Myers being this entity that just wants to kill, and definitely not introduce the sister plotline, because I just don't want to see it. And especially considering the fact that they might be introducing a whole new cast of characters that live in Haddonfield that Michael Myers is going to be terrorizing, all they need to do is acknowledge that one line that they had in Halloween 2018, which is when Dave is talking to Allison and he's like, oh, well, wasn't Michael Myers her sister? And she was like, no, that's a rumor. Like all they have to say is Michael Myers came after Laurie Strode back in the 70s, and now he's back going after a whole new group of people, because what he does is come back to Haddonfield on Halloween night and murder people. Like that is the core of Michael to me. That's all I'll ever want. I don't need things to be so expanded where he's like an actual character. I want Michael to just stay not a character. I want him to just float through the movie murdering people from scene 1 to scene end. As for when all of this could release, I don't think we're going to see anything from Halloween in 2024 outside of what we saw with Halloween 2018, which is an announcement with an Instagram picture featuring Michael Myers. I think that's all we're going to get this year, outside of stuff like a writer or maybe a director. You know, they'll fill out the creative team this year, and then in 2025, I think that's when they'll start filming, get that movie ready to go for Halloween in 2025. Because since it's a horror movie, it's going to have a lower budget. It's going to need to get out into theaters pretty quick. That leads me to believe that whenever they start filming, that's the year this movie will actually release. And honestly, I think 2025 is a good year for it, right? Like, it's enough years removed from Halloween Ends where hopefully the haters will die down. Maybe we'll even get its redemption arc that it's 100% going to have, because even the worst movies that come out have really huge redemption arcs on Twitter now, where horror fans go, oh, I just watched Scream 3 for the first time and it's not as bad as everyone says. And then suddenly people like horror critics and everyone else will start saying that they always love Scream 3. I could definitely see that happening with Halloween Ends. And even if you don't, I mark my words, that will definitely happen as time goes on. So no matter what, I think the latest we see new Halloween is 2026. And I think that's really pushing it. I think the TV show will definitely come after the movie. Like back in the day, you would see a TV show come out and it would introduce the world, and then you would see a movie eventually. That never really worked out, because expecting people to go into a movie with knowledge of a TV show, that is never really a good idea. I think it'll work in the reverse, where they release a movie, they introduce the world, they reintroduce Michael Myers, he goes away at the end of Halloween night, and then we get the TV show that fills out the timeline in between the sequel that will come out in like 2028. But regardless, it's good to know that there are options. We know we're getting a movie and a TV show from Miramax. There's interest in a Halloween 4 revival, and I think that could be really cool at the end of the day. But that's all I've got for you in today's video. If you're new here, let me know that you liked the video by subscribing and setting your notifications to all. And when you get that notification, it really helps me out when you click it. As always, guys, my name is Jimmy Champane. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and Champane.